What is going on, guys? Thanks for coming back and welcome to Junk Built. Alrighty guys, unlike everybody else, I'm gonna get right into the ground beef and salsa as soon as we start this video. So what are we doing today? Let's get it out of the way. We're gonna try to fix this block. Now, is that gonna fully happen today? Probably not. I have never done this before and I really wanna do this correctly. So with that in mind, the first thing that we're gonna do is the last thing that we did not accomplish in the last video on this truck. We need to do this fender. And you're asking me, why am I gonna do that fender now? Why didn't I just do it before? Could have had a much better looking truck. I went to car wash, all this other stuff. Well, here's the reason. One, it's a pain in the butt to do this fender. And two, I wanted to get this fender pulled out and I wanted it to stay out of the way for a specific reason. And well, guys, that specific reason is if you are returning, if you haven't been here before, haven't seen the video, this 2001 Dodge Ram 2500 Cummins has a big old crack in the block. Am I gonna get close enough that you're gonna be able to see the whole thing? Absolutely not. But you know when I will be able to do that? When I pull that fender off, and that's the whole point of the situation. As soon as we pull this fender off, we're gonna have probably an immense amount of room that we did not have before. Because believe it or not, this is not the most comfortable situation to work on a cracked block, am I wrong? So, as per usual, we've got the tools laid out, well, at least a couple of them. We've got some batteries, and we also have the drill bit and all the taper screws and everything to do it with. Like I said, guys, the probability of me finishing this all in this, 5-minute, 10-minute span, probably not gonna happen. But what I will be able to do is tear down the rest of this block, at least get my eyes on it, get started, and get a feel for what this is gonna take. And guys, I just wanted to say, if you were wondering, in the last video on the Dakota, where I stated I had a few more parts to wait for, but I needed one more, this is what we were waiting on, guys. So, if you haven't had many second-gen Dodges in your day, you probably don't know what this is. Well, this is a heater core. This goes inside of the dash on this bad boy. And, well, let me just give you a look of how I can tell that this thing is going to need this. So besides the previous owner straight up telling me that he just looped them and something happened to the heater core, we're gonna go inside and we'll show you exactly what's going on. No, we won't, because I don't have the fucking keys. So the major reason that I know that this thing needs a heater core without even taking it apart, looking at it majorly or anything otherwise, is I'm pretty sure I've got the bottom of Lake Erie in the dashboard of this bad boy. And that's not even the worst part. I've already cleaned some of this. When I tell you that this heater core let go, I'm telling you let go like Riley Reid. But anyways, guys, this thing has absolutely let go. We need a new heater core, so I went ahead and grabbed it. Now, if you're anything like me, you're looking at me like, hey, dipshit, shouldn't we fix the cracked block before we go ahead and buy a heater core and, all that other stuff? Well, I'd say you're absolutely correct, but I've never been good at thinking clearly, and that heater core was 40 bucks on Amazon, so worst comes to worst, I can return it. But at the end of the day, I'm just really hopeful that this goes successfully, at least to a point where we can, drive the truck and at least have some fun with it for a while before something comes up again. So that's the reason I went ahead and picked that up. I also picked up new vacuum lines and things like that just to finish off a couple more things that I was doing on it. But the major thing that we need to get to today is obviously pulling this fender. No, I'm playing. We need to get this block tore down so we can get an idea, at least, on how we're starting this. So guys, with that being said, I need to go ahead and shut my mouth and at least start pulling this fender off before we don't have any more daylight. All right, guys, and again, if you're an idiot like me and you've decided to invest your time and money into a second-gen Dodge, you just find yourself needing to replace the passenger fender. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how. First, take that bad boy off. And honestly, just to make it a little easier, I'm just gonna go ahead and show you where all the bolts are. You got these three sitting in the front. So down here, what you're gonna end up seeing is a 13, another 13, another 13, another 13, another 13, and yet again, another 13. There's one sneaky little bolt that mostly gets everybody. It's gonna be right here. It's a 13 as well. Go ahead and snag that off. Now this guy, whoo boy, when I tell you about this guy. So what I've really got to say is the clip in the back of this bad boy, this is gonna end up being a 13, by the way. And the clip on the back of that bad boy absolutely gets roached. Doesn't matter if your truck has 10,000 miles or a million miles, that clip is roached. Most of the time, you're gonna break that clip. But the biggest thing to do is just get some vice grips. Even vice grips aren't great. You're gonna get it around there. You're gonna spend about 20 minutes cussing and wondering why Dodge got away with this. And at the end of it, you might get that off. And if not, you'll be a smarter man to go get one of these bad boys right here. Save your time, chop the end of that bolt off, and just be done with it. You don't wanna deal with it, I assure you. Well, boys, I'm not gonna lie to you. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. The bolt came out. I mean, If you know the history on this truck, this is just hilarious to me. 560,000 miles rusted to death. First truck I've ever had out of dozens of second gens that this bolt just came out. Also wanted to throw in here where I was taking a second to look. All of these ground wires that you see here, if you do not have these on your truck and you have any kind of electrical issue, that is the first thing I would start with. So we are actually going to spend the time, go ahead and pull this out. And that really should be just about the last thing I have to do before I can pull this fender off. Alrighty, so you've got your headlights disconnected, your blinker, you've run in your wires through the rest of this. You've already disconnected the wire that runs through here with all the zip ties, well, wire ties, whatever you want to call them. And then the last thing that you are not going to forget is coming down here to grab this bad boy off the front fender. What is this? I don't know, doesn't matter. Don't rip it. And there you go. So with that being done, as you can kind of tell by what's happening here, other than the antenna cable, this fender's already ready to come off. After you very carefully go ahead and remove your antenna cable, you should be just about ready. All right, and at the end of the day, if you listen to at least 60% of what I said, you should have something that looks like this and a fender that looks something like that. So after evacuating at least 3 different kinds of animals that were living in that bad boy, we now have an open space. And what is the importance of this open space? Well, as you noticed before, I wasn't able to show you this crack. So I'd say we're already improving. Well, we're gonna go ahead and remove this, get this popped off. I've already had it off a couple times. With that, I'm probably gonna go ahead and pull off this turbo. I think that would probably be the easiest way to go. Now, you say easiest way to go, I say I'm gonna get fucked, because that does not look like a fun activity, dude. Honestly, ooh, we might be able to get away with going ahead and just doing the housing there, because I don't really need any space back further than that, and I think that'll be comfortable. So we're gonna probably go ahead and hit that with some of my favorite juice. It's the best flavor of juice. Let's go ahead and get some Plebe Blaster. And we're gonna create a smoke stream whenever we go ahead and turn this truck back on by throwing as much PB Blaster all over the manifold as we possibly can. Yeah. I need to call her. Alrighty, so I know you didn't see it, but I went ahead and pulled off this V-band and kind of discovered that the gasket for this is absolutely torqued. So that's good to know. We're gonna go ahead and throw this on the side. That way we can order a new one. Well, frankly, at the end of the day, I just went ahead and shoved it on the side, and I don't think that's going to affect me any. Honestly, this ground wire is going to piss me off more than that is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a very religious man, and I don't think anybody else needs to be either, but, you know, if you're telling me God doesn't exist and you're watching things like this happen, I don't know, I might debate with you. This is the 4th and last manifold to turbo bolt. This is actually kind of the up pipe from that. I don't know exactly what it's called, but the last bolt, and it does feel like it's going to come out on a 500,000 mile Cummins. Now, I'm sure this is probably not the first time that this has been out, but it probably hasn't been out very much in its lifespan. So, pretty happy about this little situation here, and if this keeps going along with this build, I think we'll be pretty happy. Just pulling the turbo off of the manifold. We've also got to undo the oil line that was leaking anyways. I noticed that whenever I pulled it out the last time, so pull that off. I'm gonna have to pull off the oil filter housing as much as I don't want to, because it does seem as though the crack is extended at least behind the oil filter itself. Maybe not the housing for the oil filter, but definitely something we need to inspect. So let me get this finished up, and then once we get to that point, I'm gonna undo the oil lines and let's get this turbo off. All right, there is something that is very important that I do want you to note. So as you can see, I went ahead and got that off. But the biggest thing is when you're pulling these turbo bolts, you want to go ahead and pull this one up top, and this one on the right side down below. The reason why you don't want to pull anything else in a different pattern is this one down here is going to be a 15, and you really can't get anything, even a ratcheting wrench, kind of a turd to get on there. So what you're going to end up having to do is, instead of just leaving your ratchet here and end up screwing yourself whenever you go to pull this bolt out, you're gonna leave that one to the last, so whenever you end up pulling this out with the ratchet, it'll also pull the turbo back, so you can pull your wrench or ratchet back out of that space, and you can continue to the rest of them, or, you know, whatever else you're gonna do. And once you get that last bolt out, you should be able to walk the turbo off the manifold. So I'm gonna go ahead and set you down and get this oil fill line off, and then we'll continue. Alrighty, I know a couple of you guys are gonna ask, so as you guys can see, I'm pushing it back and forth. This thing basically has 0 shaft play in this this turbo. So you guys can go ahead and let me know. I'm not even for sure, but Those are the numbers. I don't know if this is probably more than likely a reman or, you know, a replaced turbo, knowing the amount of miles and such on this thing. So otherwise, like I said, this thing is in really, really good shape. Makes no noise. I'm actually the one that pulled the silencer off, so I had it on there the whole time. So yeah, that's in pretty good shape. So as I mentioned before, we've got the turbo off now. We've got a little bit better idea of what this crack looks like. I'll let you guys get a little bit closer of a view here. So it's basically starting somewhere around this area, and it ends up folding somewhere around where behind the oil filter is. So that's why we're gonna end up having to pull this oil filter, just so I can get a better eye on it. So I'm just judging this purely off of the fact of where you can see everything is kind of fallen down, rusted over time. That just kind of confirms that for me. But obviously we're gonna have to clean off wire brush, etc., the block. Clean it off again after that, because if you wire brush it and then do not clean it, it could just fill in some of the cracks that you won't be able to see. So we're gonna go ahead and clean all of that off whenever we get to that point. That way we can see everything really well, and then we will start on the repair from there. For now though, we need to focus on pulling this oil filter housing. I'm debating on pulling the alternator. I really don't want to. I'm trying to find a way that I can do around that, but it looks like we might have to pull it anyways. So this is going to be my block heater, I would assume, and it looks like it is in fantastic condition, as all of them always are. We're going to go ahead and pull this off. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, if you know second gens, if you have a good fuel injection unit and everything else on, this thing will start in like -20, like it was 50 degrees the day before. So I'm not really that concerned about it. I'm going to go ahead and shut up. We need to pull this coolant line off, this hard line that goes all the way up here. Go ahead and pull that off. That was actually what was leaking in my third gen that I had to fix a little bit ago. So we're gonna go ahead and pull that off, and as well as that, whenever we get done with this truck, hopefully we'll be able to hook the heater core back up and we won't have this situation going on. I'm gonna probably pull some of this off camera real quick, and I will be back with you in probably just a minute. Honestly, it's gonna be a bunch of boring crap that you guys really just don't wanna see me struggle with. So whenever I get to that point, we will come back and we will talk a little more. And just so you know, guys, it is absolutely mandatory that you have to forget about the coolant and dump every ounce of what you have right on to whatever floor that you're working on. So guys, when that happens, don't worry about that. That is just something that comes along with the deal. Well guys, I think it's safe to say that whatever water was in this, it wasn't having a great time. That looks like Flint, Michigan's water, and I don't mean that as a joke. Another tip or trick I would like to say, if you're going to be doing something like this, especially if you're going to be using or removing the oil cooler on this truck, try to set it overnight or, you know, a couple of days. That way, whenever you remove the oil filter, everything's just in there and you don't have any drips coming out of it, so you don't need a drip pan. But then you guys were wondering, the oil in this thing, although it is dirty, is not watery. It's actually decent oil, which is why we're doing this. Yeah, Dad. I don't know what happened to the cooling system. Oh, no, man, I never put water in it. What are you talking about? I might have put a little bit in there, but I definitely didn't forget about it, dude. That definitely isn't what happened. That is pure water, ladies and gentlemen. Man, there are some people that, you know, should own things like this, and there are some people that just shouldn't. I know I should probably do a bigger reveal, like shove this thing back in, pull it out, and then be like, oh my God, guys, but I'm gonna do that anyways, because it popped out already. Holy crap, guys. If this video teaches you anything, please do not put water in your vehicle and leave it in winter, dude. This is just, I mean, that almost takes skill to be that dumb. And this wasn't like it was only in there for a minute, man. That's been in there like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this safely on the floor of my shop. Now, luckily, it actually looks like this gasket might be good. And I know what you're thinking, you definitely shouldn't reuse this gasket, but I mean, are we seeing the same truck? I mean, seriously. So anyways, got this guy going ahead and pulled off. This definitely looks reusable, so we should be good there as long as I keep my greasy hands from it. The line looks good, everything's looking good here, so I think we'll be all right. And really, the only two last things that I want to do before I get in here and start trying to figure out what we need to do next is I need to go ahead and pull this. I think it's an oil line. Yeah, it's the oil line for the turbo. I need to pull this ground wire off so I can get a better positioning in here. I don't think I need to remove this. I am gonna bend it down a little bit. I know, come at me, I don't care. Man, I am terrified. Look at that, dude. How far is that in there? How am I even gonna get in? Alrighty guys, for you, it's only been a couple seconds from that last clip, but for me, it has been quite a while. It's probably been about an hour, half, 2 hours since we last spoke. And in that time, I've done quite a bit, but one of those things was, we got a wire wheel, cleaned up where the crack is. Now right here, I'm having kind of an issue deciding whether or not the crack continues all the way over here, or if it kind of stops right about this area where my fingernail is. But I did shave this a little bit too much with the wire wheel, and I figure that might be the problem. As you guys have probably noted by this, I've also cleaned up the flange for the oil filter housing. I didn't get quite down there because it's obviously on a drill, but I will get down there before we do it. I've also been covering this while cleaning this, just so you guys know. This is actually the rag that was on it. Just to make sure that nothing got in there. Biggest thing right now is I'm trying to get some of this cleaned out in here to make sure that it doesn't do what it's doing to that, to the rest of the cylinders. But I can tell you one thing is for certain, whenever we do get this truck running, I'm not going to be hooking up the heater core immediately. I'm going to be clearing the entire system out multiple times from whatever fluid is left in it before we fill it up with anything else in the truck. Now, I do think as we drill into the side of the block here, it's going to release some of that water in there, which, you know, good or bad, it's probably going to help us a little bit with the drilling in it, and, you know, a little bit of liquid never hurt anything while drilling. I've been debating on actually pulling the alternator off. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I'm just about there. I don't really need to. Luckily, I will say it does not seem as though I've got a crack going around the oil filter housing, which is what I was actually really scared of, because I don't know how you would go in there with a tapered plug and fix that up if it was actually like in this little hump area right here. It seems as though it actually stops a little bit sooner here. I might preemptively go ahead and throw a couple more tapers at the end here, just to make sure if this is the end of the crack and I just can't see it with my own naked eye, that I do cover it in a correct way, that it will basically be fixed beforehand. Now, if you guys have noticed, if you go a little bit further up, there is a crack in the oil filter housing. Now, this could be caused by multiple things. More than likely the water, but otherwise could be caused by just an over-torqued oil filter housing bolt. We're gonna look a little bit more into this and obviously go a little bit more in depth here and see if we can't clear anything up. But I do not believe that that is where anything has been leaking, so I think we are good there. Well guys, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Not a lot of YouTubers are going to come out and say this to you guys, or, you know, you're going to cover things up and etc. But I really wanted to get this video out to you guys today, this week, etc. So I'm going to have to break it to you. I'm an idiot. And what I mean by being an idiot is I just broke a drill bit that is specifically built for this kit. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, this is just a drill bit, right? You can just go to the store and buy one of these. No, and the reason for that, and the reason that I know that for a fact is I already tried. I went to the store before I ended up buying this because of the price of how much this bigger one, or this one here was. I tried to buy one from the store like how you would just get for a bolt or a nut or etc. that you're trying to rethread, and it comes like this. Now the problem with it being manufactured like this is it doesn't have the tip like this one does here, and the reason that that tip is important is it doesn't really seem that important when you put these two side by side, but whenever you bring out one of the taper plugs, you kind of start to see why it's more important. Because if these are the exact same size tappers, now the problem is with this one being specifically meant for these tappers, it's longer as a tapper, so it can have a bigger range for the tapper to go in and really lock into. With it being just a normal one, it kind of comes in this shorter thread, and the reason that that's a problem is it doesn't let the tapers in until it gets almost to the edge of the taper. Fortunately, guys, it's bad news. I'm not going to be able to make this work without the new tapers. I will admit there is a couple of good things that came out of this. So after going through an absolute crap ton of my drill bits, I was able to locate 3 of the exact same kind of drill bits, which also match the original one that is specifically meant for this kit. They are all 3 SSH 1364s. This is what I need, and I specifically need them obviously in the metal, the SSH, because they got that little flange, little fin at the end of that drill bit. So that's what's made for going through metal. So I mean, that is good news considering these are $20 drill bits. So that is $20 that I'm going to end up saving off of the tapered tap that I'm going to end up having to buy. And then whenever I buy a second one, it's just going to end up doing the same thing. So I'm going to end up buying 2 of them, which is going to cost me $140, but I might be able to send one back if I'm just really, really careful. The only reason and the biggest reason that I'm buying 2 of them is because I have probably 50 plus tapered plugs to put in this truck. And the chances of me breaking another one of those taps is pretty high between 50 plugs. So unfortunately, I didn't get to start where I wanted to today. That's okay. For you guys, if I end up making this all one video, it's not gonna make a difference. So I ended up cleaning all of the flange all the way down on the oil cooler. As you guys have saw, I do have a crack on this. I will admit it does worry me a little bit. I might throw a couple tapers in a little bit more deeper into this, but honestly, I'm not that concerned with this because it doesn't seem to go much past the actual screw hole here. So we've got the entire crack lined out. We know where everything is. And at the end of the day, for me guys, that's fine to screw this up a little bit. And the reason that I say that is this is kind of what it's for. This truck has 560,000 miles. And at the end of the day, if I was gonna fuck up any block on any truck at any time, I would prefer it to be this one because I have a little bit nicer things that I'd kind of rather not do that with if I ever have to come to this experience. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to end up wanting to replace or fix a block if this truck has that kind of problem, but this is the truck to do it on and learn on, being that it's so many miles on it and it's really not worth it as much as a normal Cummins. And plus, at the end of the day, guys, this thing has a giant crack in it. This thing should have been already thrown away, scrapped out, and used for parts. So if we end up having to do that at the end, it's not really going to affect me as much. I mean, don't get me wrong, the probably $300 or more that I've spent on this whole kit, yeah, it'll take it out, but that's experience that I get to keep up here, and that's the way that I'm going to think about it. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you've made it to this point, I'm going straight home to order another tap, and we will be doing this yet again as soon as that comes in. Alrighty, so if you guys remember, I've been talking for about a week, waiting on some parts for the old Cummins here. And well, if you're seeing this video today, then that means I've got parts. So we are gonna attempt one more time to try to fix this block. And if you guys have seen the first part of the video, you'll be able to realize that I broke one of these bad guys. Well guys, this is what about $70 worth of a tap looks like. Why is this $70? Good Lord, I couldn't tell you. But the main reasons are it cuts into cast iron, and unlike usual taps, it's much, much larger. So you can basically start from here, and it basically keeps the thread in a tapered style. That way when you actually put the tapered bolts in, they fit in nice and snug. And it's kind of a way to make sure that nothing leaks out, etc. They kind of know what they're doing with this one. And if you guys also remember, I never ended up actually putting this fender on this truck when we did the rest of the rust-free parts video. So there you go. There's the first look at it with the nice new fender in it. Now, like my first love, I'm catfishing you. The reason I say I'm catfishing you is this bad boy's held on with one bolt. So it may look really good and oddly kind of lines up pretty well for not being bolted in. It is ready to come back out. Now I've got to pull this fender so we can get in here and get a little bit better view on what we've got to do. Alrighty, so we got the fender pulled off. Well, it's time to do the dirty part, the part that I have not been looking forward to. As much as I am excited to get this truck done and you know, drive it around, I am fretting this. I have $140 worth of drill taps here, and I am terrified to break them. I already broke one. Well, that really means I have about 160 to 100 $70 worth of drill bits. But yeah, overall, I'm just terrified to break these last two. So I'm gonna be really careful, not be as fat fingered as I have been, and we're gonna try to get right into it. Alrighty guys, so I was gonna wait a little bit longer before I kind of showed you what was going on, but I've had 3 of them go really well. So between that time, there's a couple of things that I've noticed that I think you guys are gonna wanna know if you guys are tackling this. So the absolute first thing that I have to say is if you do not have some of this stuff, this is dye lubricant. You can buy this pretty much anywhere, but I had this left over from another kit that I had, something completely unrelated. But this stuff right here just saved me so much fear and so much time. It's gonna make it to where this thing just glides in and out of that thing like no tomorrow. Giggity, 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 giggity. It's gonna be 10 times better. I've tried WD-40, as you know, I have it sitting here. I've tried the PB Blaster, and there's nothing better than this right here to make sure that you do not break this. And I know even I was the first time like, hey, maybe I'll just be really careful. I'm not gonna worry about it. Don't do that to yourself. I broke one of these on the first try the last time I tried to do this. And with this dye lubricant, things are going way smoother. Alrighty, so if you guys wanted to know what was going on, as you guys can see here, I've got a couple of grinder marks near the block. I've already got one here. I've got a second one in the middle here, and I'm starting on my third. So this one's all the way in. Now all I have to do is take the grinder, cut the edge of this off. You can see the second one way better than the first one because the grinder mark kind of took it out. But the second one, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna overlap that second one, or the one that you just put in just a little bit, with the drill bit. And how you're gonna know that you did that is, as you can see here, this is more of a silvery style dust, and this is gonna be obviously cast iron, you know, obviously rusty, a little bit different color of metal shards whenever you're cutting through one of these bolts versus the block. So you'll know for sure whether you're overlapping or not just by that. But regardless guys, I've got to tackle this. I've got so many of these left to do and not enough time. So I'm gonna try to tackle as many of these as I can, as quickly as I can, and I will update you guys a little bit later. Oh, and as an afterthought, just in case you guys were wondering, you definitely want to pick up one of these. The reason being is you're gonna want to clean that tap each time you use it. You might be able to clean just these big inner pieces without it, but with it, you're able to get into these threads and really clean this up so you don't dull this out, especially if you're doing something like me where I've got over 100 of these to do. So, but all right guys, give me a minute. It's gonna take me a bit to get this done, but I'm gonna get as many as I can done, and I will be right back. All right, now usually I like to come back straight into it with the finished product, but ultimately that's just not gonna happen. I have literally pulled engines and transmissions out of vehicles that were both less tedious and less time consuming than this job is right here. Now you're probably going, what's so bad about it? Well, really it's not the job itself that's bad. Really the problem is it's just so damn tedious. You've got to sit here for hours upon hours, and I've only got about 20 of them in here. Really the reason that it is so tedious is you've got to go in there with the drill. You've got to drill the perfect size hole, which granted, you don't really have to be perfect. What I'm talking about is there is a coolant passage back here that you can kind of see and access. You'll know when you hit it because regardless of how much coolant you pulled out of the truck, a little bit's going to come out of that seep hole if you go past that coolant passage. Now, I don't really think it's going to be a problem either way if you go past it or if you stay behind it. I have chosen on most of them, after I did do a few of them that went into the passage, I decided I'm just going to stay out of it in general, and I've started putting them a little bit before the passage. Now, how do you know that the passage is going to be opening up? Well, when you're sitting here with the drill bit, it'll actually change tune. I know that sounds weird, but the sound itself of the drill bit while you're hitting it will change a tune as if it hits a different metal. When it does that, you're about to go through the coolant passage. Now, like I said, I don't really think it's going to be a positive or a negative if you go in or out of the coolant passage. Really, you're going to be tapping it with one of these anyways. And in reality, regardless of what anybody says, the coolant passage itself is this all the way up to here. So it just having a little bit of a bump to get past really shouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm going to continue grinding on this truck, don't get me wrong, but I only have, let's say, about an hour or two left before it's getting dark out. So what's this mean? Well, really what this means is I'm going to have to come back tomorrow and do it all over again. Overall, I'm not going to be able to get this truck done, ready, and driving today anyways. And the one thing that I've learned about this entire ordeal is you have to take your time. If you are not coming at this with absolute mittens on your hands, if you are not coming at this like it is a fragile piece of glass, you're going to break this. The biggest thing about it is, and it's something that I've learned on the second go around, is do not ever touch this with a drill or an impact or anything. And I know some people will say, well, duh, but guys like me like to get this done a little quicker, and you can see how time consuming it is by hand. You really want to try to quicken it up and do something a little faster. Now, the reason why it will not work with this is if you get to a certain point, even if it's not the end of the hole that you've drilled, and it creates any kind of snag on these threads, you're going to snap this bad boy right in half. And as you guys can see, it's only that big. It's really not something that you should be putting any pound-feet of torque on, if you know what I mean. So if you guys are wondering what I ended up using to do this, it's actually a bit odd. So this guy here, I could not find a wrench, a socket, anything the same size as this to be able to do this by hand in a better manner. So what I've ended up creating here is that I did notice that my extension fits in it perfectly. If you take this and you slap it in the end of an extension, it fits almost perfectly, and it's something that you can use. Now, I'm not usually one to make custom tools, but this here ended up working out incredibly, and not for the reason you think. So the biggest deal I've had about this situation is being absolutely terrified that if it does snag something, I'm going to end up breaking it. And with it being a bit offside, as you know, this is not straight, you've kind of got to go around with it. It holds it in a really good place, holds it straight, and the biggest thing is pretty much no matter how tight you hit this bad boy, if you're in there with a tap and you're tapping it in, if you go too much and that tap catches and it doesn't want to move, what will actually happen is this extension actually spins. You can see it's done it a couple of times while I've done it because I've caught the tab on something. And although that is usually not a good thing if you're trying to make a custom tool to put something in, on this experience, it's actually perfect. I have almost no way to break this tap other than doing something along these lines. I cannot tighten this enough to break that tap, which is fantastic. Because as you guys know, I'm a straight up idiot. And if you give me anything that I can break, I'm gonna break it. So that tool ended up working out perfectly. But again, guys, I really want to stress on something like this, you want to take your time. You do not want to rush it. You do not want to go at it with intentions on getting done in a certain time frame. It's just not going to happen. This is the one thing that even me being as ADHD as I am and, you know, blessed with autism a bit, I know to slow down on this. Now, it only took me a $60 lesson, a broken tap, but I know that I have to take this slow, I can't rush it, and I'm not going to. Frankly, there's plenty of beautiful days in Missouri, and I'll be back tomorrow to finish this up. I've got about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before I have to pack up and go. So although I may not see you guys on this camera, I'm gonna start busting as hard as I can to get this thing done. And however close I get is however closer we can be tomorrow whenever I start this part 3. Oh, and if you guys noticed in the background, besides the Dakota project, which I'll let you know what we've got planned for this here in a minute, a couple of people were asking about this old truck that was sitting behind the barn. As good as this truck may look on this side, and I was able to drive it today to pick up a few parts for that thing, she's got a bit of a surprise. So as you can tell, this one is also a Copart salvage vehicle. I picked this truck up over a year ago, and I've had it sitting in the back for the longest time. Now, you may ask why it's been sitting for so long. The real reason is, this is the first truck that I ever bought from Copart. Why does that make it a big problem? Well, the issue with that is when I bought this truck, I didn't quite understand the rules of highway patrol and a rebuilt salvage title. So what's the problem on that truck, you might ask? Well, I don't really have receipts for certain parts on this truck. Now, although I do have a bed for it, as you guys have seen it back there, I also have a couple of doors for it. The biggest issue with this truck is I don't have a cab piece. A while back, I actually did go to the junkyard and pick up a cab piece. And although that can be used for highway patrol as long as you get the VIN number, a photo of the car, etc., like I said, this is a truck that I purchased way back when I didn't even know highway patrol demanded me to have receipts for things like that. So really the reason that I've been slow on this truck is I don't have receipts for that cab piece that I pulled off on another truck over a year ago. And although it may look like I'm made of money, guys, I straight up am not. And with that being said, that's a $900 to $1,200 piece for that cab, and that doesn't even include the inner structure itself that came with the other piece. I think what I'm going to end up doing is, under the salvage rebuilt code, there's nothing that says I have to fix that cab. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to fix both doors, and I'm also going to fix the bed. I've got taillights for it as well as headlights for it, and that itself will probably make this truck to the point it'll pass highway patrol. And then, you know, whatever happens after highway patrol, well, that's none of their business. So if you guys did want a quick sneak peek, a little bit of information about this truck, this is a 2017 Dodge Ram 1500. This is the Bighorn edition. And this truck only has 72,000 miles on it, but as you guys saw, it does have a cab issue. Now, I threw a couple of these seats in here. These are some sport seats that I actually have planned to go into the 3rd gen, but for now, they're sitting in here. Some of you guys might understand, but I just don't really want seats that are cracked up like this, something that's just not quite perfect to go in a 2017 with 72,000 miles. I'd rather get the seats that are in the 3rd gen, replace the bottom that it needs, and have what looks to be the brand new set of matching gray Bighorn seats. So you're probably gonna ask me, what's the plan for this bad boy? Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, I plan to keep that too. I have had that truck for over a year and a half, and within that year and a half, I picked up a 2013 Longhorn with all the bells and whistles, or so I thought, which really convinced me to save that truck and to keep it for myself is the 8-speed transmission. The 8-speed transmission behind the 5.7 in those things are nuts. It literally single-handedly made me decide to sell my Longhorn after I had already done wheels, lift kit, bumpers. I had done tons of aftermarket work to that truck simply because the transmission just wasn't the same. The 2017 model year came with the 8-speed transmission, and with that, it made this truck way quicker off the line. Not only does it drive better, get better mile per gallon, but it keeps the RPMs down on the highway, so even if you're saving mile per gallon, it keeps the exhaust tone low. And with that, I believe it'd even help on some towing if you were doing light duty stuff. I also wanted to throw an update in here for the Dakota. A couple of people, well actually an overwhelming amount of people told me, don't waste your time with this thing. Put the parts towards the Durango. I understand that. I think you guys might be onto something with that. I believe that is exactly what I'm going to end up doing. Don't let what I say make you think that I'm going to waste this truck. I'm going to spare every piece, every part that I can off of this truck to use either on Cooter or the Durango. So don't think this thing is going to die for no reason. But that's enough of that. I think you've got the update on a couple of vehicles that I plan to further bring to the channel, as well as a 3rd gen, which hopefully that gets done a little soon too, so we can start on the 4th gen dash swap again. But like I said, guys, I'm going to try to get as much done on this truck as I can today, and I'll see you guys in the morning. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Junk World. So if you guys paid attention in the last part 2, I kind of had to stop for the day. It was getting too late, so we're back up. It's the morning. I'm back up here. It's been a while since I've usually been out here for like 3 days, but this shouldn't be too bad. So we've got a lot of work to do, so let's get into it. So if you guys recall correctly, we got about almost halfway through, I'd say, probably about 40% yesterday. after about 3 or 4 hours. I had to make a couple store trips, but so these are actually twist off plugs. So if you tighten them down all the way and the threads hold, they will just snap off. I was a little worried about the threads for a little bit, so I didn't use the snap off method. I ended up just grinding them off for the first half, but I think it will be more efficient if I do it this way. So we're gonna go ahead and try this. Now, if you guys remember, we had this little issue going with that big hole there. We've got a copper pipe plug stood in there, and I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to grind this down flat, and then I'm going to tap into each side so it kind of locks it in place. So if that doesn't work, I'll have to probably drill it a little bit bigger and put a bigger plug in there, but for now it looks like that might hold. So I think what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna try to get as much done of this as I can before I start worrying about that, because if I do that first, that'll just take up most of my day, and that is not what I'm really here to be doing. I really need to get the rest of this block done today. So, as I usually say, it's time for me to stop yapping, and I've got to get to work. This is gonna take basically 6 seconds for you guys, but it's probably gonna be 6 hours for me. So let's get right into it and see what we can't get done on this thing. Believe it or not, I think I actually have some good news. And I won't lie to you, good news usually doesn't happen to me, so I don't know how to react right now, but I have to admit, there's going to be a few of you that are going to ask me how this job was, is it worth doing, things along those lines, and I'm going to tell you firsthand. You can see how many cars I've got around here, and you can tell that I might have worked on 1 or 2 in my lifetime, and I have to say, I'm pretty sure, now there's a lot when I say this, but I'm pretty sure this is the worst thing I've ever done on a vehicle, period. This was the most tedious, the most time-consuming thing I've ever experienced, honestly. I mean, it's incredible. Now, I didn't quite use 100 of them, but I used damn close to it. So if you guys have noticed, that was that little plug that I did earlier as well. We've got 2 on both sides of that, kind of holding that into that bigger hole anyways. So it's kind of locked in. That's the best way actually now that I'm going to be able to explain to you what I've done here today. So I know it's dark, but if you want light, it's going to be a little bit different. So if you'll notice in a few of these, you're going to be able to see that they overlap. Well, the reason that they overlap is because of the lock and stitch. So obviously you've got the stitch itself being the threaded plug, but the locking part of it is when you overlap them, it does not allow them to loosen back up. The only way this is going to be able to leak is if A, I missed a spot, which is very possible, or B, the actual block itself cracks again around these and creates a leak. And I have to admit, it was not all done without our fair share of deaths. I ended up breaking one of the extra threaded taps, and I'm not gonna lie to you, the fear that sent through my body when that happened, I can't even explain to you, because I only had one left after I broke that first one, which I didn't even plan on breaking, and the way that I broke it was, yet again, something ridiculous that I shouldn't have done, being big fat hands. I was really concerned about the fact that I'm gonna break this last tap, and it's just gonna make this video a bigger deal than it needs to be. I'm gonna have to spend more money on taps, and really, I just didn't wanna do that. So to say that on these last few plugs that I was absolutely going as gingerly as possible is probably accurate. But overall, guys, I'm actually really happy with how this has gone out so far. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I fully expect there to be a leak. I do not expect this to be perfect. Knowing me, I did as best as I could going through each of these, but as I started going towards the end, I really just wanted to get it done as quickly as possible. So if I missed one and I have to tap that thread and put another thread plug in it, that is perfectly fine. I have plenty of them. And for those of you that were curious how many I used, well, I'll put it this way. That was a pack of 100, so minus whatever's left in there. And boy, let me tell you, do I have a graveyard going of these bad boys laying all over the place. But guys, I'm kind of in awe. I'm kind of in shock. We're at the moment we've been waiting for a long time, really, to see if this thing is saved. So let me know what you guys think. I believe I'm going to make a video finishing up the rest of the truck. I think this video is probably too long as it is, but I'm going to get right on it, throw the fenders back together, throw everything back together, and see how this thing reacts. God, I'm nervous. Well, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was starting up a video real quick to do something when I just noticed, all right then. You don't need that motor mount bolt anyways. As well as whenever I mentioned the fact that this is the hardest job I think I've ever accomplished, this is also one of the messiest. This is actually cleaned up a little bit afterwards, but boy, I tell you, after I car washed this thing and it was spotless, to see it like this, I'm a little hurt. I mean, just take a look in there, guys. And if you guys were wondering how long it actually took me to accomplish this whole deal, now, granted, this was a huge crack versus probably if you had any other block, you would not be spending this amount of time on it. But using about 75 tapered screws, I ended up getting done in about 2 days. Now, whenever I say 2 days, I mean 2 days. Yesterday, I came out here at about 1 or 2 o'clock. I didn't end up leaving until about 7 or 8, and that was only about a third of the way done. To finish it off, I got here today at about 8 a.m., 9 a.m., got to work after going to the part stores and everything about 10, and right now we are sitting here at 4 o'clock p.m. So really, guys, all we've got left to do is throw everything back together. Now, granted, I will admit, I do have to grab a couple more gaskets, but I went ahead, cleaned up the turbo pretty well, got everything all shined up. I need to clean a few more surfaces here, and hopefully this will be done with, and this can be something we focus on. So guys, like I usually say, enough yapping for me. I need to get to work and getting this thing thrown back together. Alrighty guys, I was gonna end the video early and probably do like a part 3 situation where I was gonna come back and, you know, throw everything back together and blah, blah, blah. Well, to be honest with you, I've got a couple more parts to grab. I got a turbo oil feed gasket I need to grab, as well as a couple other things for the truck to really finalize it. I had a couple of oil leaks and stuff like that that I had to figure out right off, and also the alternator quit charging, which we've got to figure that situation out. But I figured she's running right now. She's starting to do a little heat up, so I might as well show you guys what's going on. So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. As you can tell, I've got the battery kind of just laying there. Things are just thrown up there. But the important thing was to make sure that this thing, when it heated up, it's gonna hold coolant, that there was no combustion gases in the coolant, etc. So you guys can see, we're doing pretty good so far. I'm also gonna peek in here and show you. My alternator, like I said, is not charging. I'm not sure why that is, but we are almost at temperature and things are looking pretty good so far. I'm gonna let this thing get up to temperature as long as I can until the battery dies on it, because I've got to figure out what's going on with the alternator. But like I said, I need to make sure that what I did is holding. Alrighty guys, and with that, that's gonna be the end of the video, at least the third part on this truck. If you guys wanna see more, if you guys wanna see me put this thing back together, actually road test it and make sure that it holds, let me know. Obviously, I've still got to put it back together. There's a few more things I got to do to it. I know that I've got to order a couple more gaskets that I've got to get for it. So everything that was put together right now was really just put together for temporary purposes anyways. It seems to hold coolant pressure right now. Everything seems to be going well with it so far. But again, if you guys want to see another video on this old red truck and you want to see if it is reliable after the fix, let me know. I plan on coming up here within the next couple of days and finishing it up. I really, really, really want to drive this thing. I really want to get it on the road, see how it really does. Besides that, I have had this truck up to 70 miles an hour before, and it actually did remarkably well. So I would be really, really excited to road test. But obviously we've got things like gaskets I need to get. The alternator's not charging. Definitely could use an oil change and a coolant flush after we get that little issue figured out. But yeah, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end the video here. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for tuning in to Junkville, and please come on back for the next video and see what other dumb stuff I get into.